SDEEFNAS.
That's what we're talking about today.
Welcome to the Utah Real Estate Show podcast, the show where two agents and a lender teach real estate best practices by talking through mistakes we've seen and made.
But I've had where the dates are all messed up and they're too soon. I've had the settlement deadline be before the due diligence deadline.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I've actually seen contracts like that and went, oh shoot.
Welcome to another episode of the Utah Real Estate Show. I am Tyler Kazare, Utah Real Estate Agent.
Jason Christiansen, mortgage lender.
Eric Quist, Utah Real Estate Agent.
In today's episode, we're talking about Section 24, which is deadlines.
Section 24 of the Utah State Purchase Contract, also known as the REPC.
Yep, SDEEFNAS.
So what those are, seller's disclosures, due diligence, financing and appraisal, and settlement, not to be confused with closing.
Correct. And so have we ever seen this filled out incorrectly, Eric?
Oh, yeah. Constantly. I think the biggest one that I see is it's completely unintentional. And I've actually done it too. Luckily, I caught it before it was sent out. But the calendar on the electronic side, when you click it, it doesn't automatically, in the MLS, when you were filling this out, it doesn't keep the last date that you clicked on, and it just keeps going back to the original, which makes sense. But I've had where the dates are all messed up and they're too soon. I've had the settlement deadline be before the due diligence deadline.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I've actually seen contracts like that and went, oh shoot. Now,
is this what you meant? We're going to close before you do your due diligence?
That is the big one though, because you can have other dates flip-flopped, okay? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be in that exact order, except for settlement. True. You can't have your settlement, and if you send this over, this is where earnest money comes into a very interesting situation. But if it's all signed and accepted and nobody catches those dates, you have a valid accepted contract with a settlement deadline in a week.
Yeah, where earnest money
and there's 50 grand of earnest money on. So
but the earnest money isn't hard until after the financing appraisal deadline, which is 3 weeks after settlement.
Until settlement deadline. I'll get 50 grand.
Yeah.
But it's a fun section to fill out. Well, it's exciting.
Here's the question. Well, I have story time on this.
Okay,
but
let's do it.
When you're filling out this contract and you're picking your deadlines, talk to your lender, talk to your client, make sure it works.
Check the other agent.
Check holidays.
Yeah. There's an idea.
Like I've had settlement deadlines on Sunday. I've had them on federal holidays. I've had a settlement deadline that was 3 weeks out when most closings were taking over a month. And when I asked the agent why they did this, they said, we want to put pressure on you as the lender.
Did they go in your good book?
No, they're in my bad book. Here's the reality situation. I didn't lose a house. I didn't lose my earnest money. I didn't lose my commission. Like my commission a little bit, I don't get paid, but it's not as much as real estate commission.
Yeah.
There's another one on that too. I've seen contracts where you're going back and forth several addendums deep in a negotiating process. It's now been over a week and a half in negotiating process. That very first deadline of seller's disclosures was never addressed in any of the addendums, and it's already passed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the original offer. So you have to be aware of these because they are the deadlines that those terms apply to.
And time is of the essence. Yes. These deadlines are really what compose the contract. Mm-hmm. There are other terms associated with it, but these deadlines are very, very important. And like one of the things that I see, this kind of pet peeve of mine, is relative dates. It's like,
thank you so much.
Seller disclosure deadlines would be 7 days after acceptance, or something
financing
like
and appraising 21 days after acceptance.
Yeah, we've seen this.
And this is this March or is this 28 days, 31 days?
And it should be clarified afterwards.
So there's one time when this actually is the right way to fill out a contract, and that is if you're in a backup position on a house because you don't know the dates.
Or a new construction.
But still, when your offer gets accepted, throw an addendum in there.
You throw an addendum at it and you go,
the hard dates.
These are now the exact or the explicit dates of what go on, right? Mm-hmm. But it is just simply lazy of an agent or anyone else to go through and just put, it'll be 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 28 days. Yeah. That is not okay.
No.
It is not a best practice. I'll put it that way. It's not
if you're a discount agent, go ahead.
So let's talk about another weird thing. So let's say you waive your due diligence or your financing appraisal.
Oh, yes.
Do you need to put a deadline in there?
Okay. So technically, no.
Or yes.
What if your earnest money goes hard after financing?
Or you're adding additional earnest money.
Okay. There are circumstances that are disclosed in 8.2, 8.3, 8.4 where a due diligence deadline may be applicable, and it has to do with the terms of the contract that are being written. However, if you're saying I don't have a contingency for due diligence, you don't need a due diligence deadline in there unless something else is tied to it. Okay.
Which would be weird.
It would be weird.
Just pick a day.
But it would be more appropriate, in my opinion, to use an addendum to specify an exact date. This is the day when
earnest money will go hard on this
or you have additional earnest money that's being applied in 2 weeks. You just put that, and in that section it says that at the due diligence deadline, more additional earnest money is being applied.
And one last thing, settlement deadline, which is the time people sign papers and deliver any other monies from like the borrower, not the lender.
Another one real quick before we get to that one is I've ran into this one several times is on the financing and appraisal. Okay. That's actually 2 sections into one deadline.
That's true.
Okay. You have a financing and you have an appraisal. You can waive appraisal and still be contingent on financing. Okay. So be aware of that. Just because you waive this, you still may need a date or should put a date there. On that deadline too, talk to your lender about appraisal times. They vary constantly, even geographically. Even if you're in the city and you're doing one outside, we had one that it was bad. I mean, it took over a month to get the appraisal to happen, period. So be aware of those ones and communicate that and say, hey, look, we're trying to get this appraisal. We can't. Talk to your other side of that as well. And then on the settlement side, what about that deadline?
Well, settlement. Make sure that if you got a domino thing or you need the money by a certain time, that you're coinciding with settlement and closing. This is not a closing deadline. This is not when the loan will be funded.
Right.
This is when they will sign. It's when they'll deliver the rest of their money. But you may not get the rest of the money till 4 calendar days after that.
And it's a big one to, like Tyler said at the very beginning, of communicate these and think about when you're doing them with the other party. If you're signing on a Thursday and it should fund and record the next day, that means they're going to get their money. But do they have to have their money that weekend? What happens if it goes till Monday or Tuesday? Are you willing to risk that chance because the county recorder decided to call in sick and you're done?
Counties are off on Friday.
Yeah.
It will not record on Friday.
The other one that's a big pet peeve of mine is these are deadlines. Everything can happen before this. It's just when it has to happen by.
Yeah.
So if you're all done and you have your settlement deadline 2 months down the road, you don't have to go fill out a whole nother addendum to move the settlement deadline up. You can just close.
Yeah, you can just do it.
Yeah.
I've gotten this several times. Here's an addendum to move it up. Why? Can we just close in 3 days? Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we don't need an addendum for that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. The whole point of these deadlines is supporting the good practice in contract law to be clear about what you're trying to do. And if for some reason using the dates in 24 is obscuring the clarity of the document or is making it difficult to understand, it's your responsibility as the person who's putting the contract together to make that clear. That's what your job is. That's why you have the job of putting together the contract. Make it clear. And these deadlines are no different. If you're not supposed to have a deadline in there, don't put it in. If you are supposed to have a deadline, put it in there. And don't use a relative deadline. Use a real deadline. Use an actual date.
Well, what about the addendum that's a flexible deadline?
If you're using an addendum that's actually specifying a flexible deadline, yes, that is by definition relative. We'll talk about that in a future episode.
What did you learn today?
My key takeaway is that you should put an explicit deadline in those dates that are applicable.
It's important to know that the thing of the deadline has to happen when the deadline happens, such as settlement. Settlement is not closing.
Just remember, SDEEFNAS, very important. Crazy deadlines out there. Tell us below in some stories. We want to hear, where have these deadlines gone nuts? Where have they completely been haywire? And what is the weirdest thing you've seen put on a deadline?
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to see. I always like hearing.
If you want to get in touch with us, shoot us a text at 801-228-7687. Make sure you mention the show. You can email us at theutahrealestateshow@gmail.com. You can watch this show on YouTube, and you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you learned something, or if you really love this show, give us a like on YouTube and drop a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. The Utah Real Estate Show is a production of Hive Collective at Presidio Real Estate, with support from Security Home Mortgage. The NMLS number for Security Home Mortgage is 178787. The NMLS number for Jason Christiansen is 240472, Equal Housing Lender. Not only is this not legal or investment advice, but you should definitely talk to a pro before you make any real estate decision. Every situation is different and should be considered in context. Copyright Jason Christiansen, Eric Wist, and Tyler Kazare. All rights reserved. Talk to you next week.
That's awesome.
Hilarious.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to. Dang, you were listening.
You're speaking.
Every single time.
Go.
Okay.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It doesn't save the last date that you put on.
Dang it! No, let's keep going.
No.
What? Come on. That is gold.
We're having to restart this video because Tyler is
Let's-
too OCD to let this video
That's
go
fine.
through.
We'll do it.
Da-da!
Get you a cape.
So, I expletive this loan up.
Well, my key takeaway is that my key takeaway.
Again,
It's like we practiced that. We don't even need a drummer.
like we
to get
just did
N1,
half this
2,
video.
3.